Monday noon, the time is here. Shane and I'll be loud and clear. Pacific vibes, we bring the heat. AI agents can't be beat. AI agents hour, let's go. News and guests, the big show. Solving problems, we do it live. Stay informed, it's a vibe. Building agents that work for you. Making moves, we see it through. Every week, a brand new show. Tag along and watch your knowledge grow. AI agents hour, let's go. News and guests, the big show. Answering questions, we arrive. Every Monday, come alive. We want reviews, but only if it's a 5. We share the drama, we got the drive. Stay in the loop, it's the place to be. Shane and I'll be setting you free. Tune in Mondays, make your day. From the news to the problem solved. AI world, get involved.
This is Agents Hour with Shane Thomas and Abby Iyer.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Agents Hour. All right, I think that should be better. If you watched the show yesterday, you'll know that we're having some streaming difficulties with our streaming platform, but we are back. And hopefully better than ever. We will see. Sounds like we're just verifying that everything's working, but I think we're all good. So welcome to Agents Hour. I'm Shane. I'm here with Abby.
What up?
And we are actually in the same place today. Like, I can just see him. He's right here. So yeah, we're in the same room in Sioux Falls. So thanks for tuning in. We do this every week, where we bring you all the drama, all the AI news. We bring on guests. Today, it's going to be a simple show. We're just covering the news and a little bit extra, so it should be short and sweet. But we got you covered as far as what's going on in the AI world. How's it going, dude?
Pretty good. We are in the real SF, Sioux Falls, and in a basement, and it's quite cold in here, or it was. And yeah, I'm super excited for our show today. We're going to be redoing some stuff that we did yesterday, but we had a day to prepare better. So it'll be a better show today.
Yes. And for those of you that are not already subscribed, please go to YouTube, Master-AI on YouTube. Give us a like, a subscribe. We appreciate that. If you are up for it and you really like the show and want to give us a 5-star review, Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please go give us a like and a review. But today we wanted to cover 2 things. First, we want to talk a little bit about the history of LLMs, because Tyler on our team sent this link to this LLM history site, and it brought us down memory lane a bit. And so we figured we'd bring you down memory lane to see where were you when all these model drops happened. And then we're going to cover the news. And there's a lot of news. Nothing, I would say no earth-shattering news, but quite a bit to go through. So we will...
Some drama.
Always a little drama.
Yeah, tons of drama. Yeah.
So let's go ahead and start with the LLM history timeline.
Yeah, let me share that.
And while he's sharing that, this is a live show. If you want to drop a message, please do. You can drop a chat in YouTube, X, LinkedIn, wherever you're watching this, and we will pull it up on the screen and see it.
Cool. So this website is llm-timeline.com. And, starting from 2017 to today, it has both the open, closed, and milestone dates. I wanted to walk through the milestones because that's mainly what people remember, especially on the history on the way here. And, some of these things, if you've just been doing AI since 2024, you'll be part of these moments because they were big in how the industry has been shaped. Masra and Shane, Sam, and I, we joined Y Combinator in 2025 January. And that's when really we got into all of this. And so it was really cool to see what happened in 2025 because, we were all in SF together doing YC. So there's a lot of just nostalgia.
Yeah, felt like we really lived. I remember where we were. A lot of the moments where these things dropped.
And there's a lot of our batchmates were way more on the pulse than us. So like when they told us, it was like the first time we had heard it. But yeah, let's go through all of this and you'll have some fun. So starting in 2017, the big milestone. So 2017 is a long time ago, pre-COVID. For if anyone can remember a time before that. And this is where the paper came out. Attention is all you need. And for many people who see these like trolling tweets on Twitter, observability is all you need. Sandboxes is all you need. T3 chat is all you need. Like whatever all you need, it comes from this paper, which introduces the transformer architecture. So it's like the foundation for all of the stuff that's happened before. And so, yeah, now you know that that's where that joke comes from. And it's obviously overplayed, but it is really the source of all of this. Then in 2018, we have BERT, which is bidirectional encoder representations from transformers. And this revolutionized NLP benchmarks. And this was really cool. Like the cool thing about BERT and why it matters is it started the whole pre-train then fine-tune world that we live in. Techniques have changed and stuff, but BERT was pre-trained and fine-tuned. That's kind of where these like words came from. T5 is text-to-text transfer transformers. And so this was in 2019, and this is what made text generation possible. For example, you would take a text in and you would extract context and then do text out. So for example, if I said translate hello to French, it would extract hello and then transform that into bonjour. So honestly, a very like foundational piece to large language models today and everything being text based and maybe text is all you need. But yeah. Going into 2020, this is I think the marquee moment of where people started really getting into this space. So GPT-3, it had 175B parameters. It did few shot learning without fine tuning. And I think, there's a lot of stuff that wasn't fine tuned back then. But this sparked the modern LLM revolution in the sense that if you were following this and decided to get a degree in ML and you were chasing AI, you were very smart. So good for you.
Yeah. I do think that I just remember hearing a lot of people talk about they had a GPT-3 moment where they saw someone show it, right? It wasn't, they weren't running it, but they saw someone, show that this kind of worked, and it started to like click for people that, hey, there might be something here. It's not, they could squint and they could see that there's something that could be there. It wasn't quite what you'd expect today, but
I don't even think there was tool calling. Really?
No.
And if it was, I don't think so actually. Maybe 3.5. But it was terrible, Yeah. If you look at where we are today and how amazed we were back then, it's like kind of looking like at a VCR and you're like, wow, VCRs are sick. But yeah, this sparked the LLM revolution. So congrats to everyone who got in early during COVID and had nothing else to do but study LLMs. Smart people. 2021. So I think many people think Codex is a new thing. But Codex existed in 2021. It was GPT-3 fine-tuned on code. And this actually was the era of fine-tuning a lot, where people were fine-tuning GPT-3 for specific use cases. We met a law AI firm in our YC batch that was a GPT-3 era company who fine-tuned a lot of stuff. They were helping lawyers do casework and stuff like that. So we heard it from from them that they were fine-tuning. and then they threw it all away as GPT got better. But this powered GitHub Copilot, which is interesting because I was using GitHub Copilot and it wasn't very good. So,
Yeah.
2021 we were still at Gatsby too. So, but it proved that LLMs could write code in some capacity. All right, 2022 things start heating up, and you'll see that things start heating up every year after GPT-3. So Instruct GPT introduced RLHF, right? This pioneers the technique of training models to follow human instructions safely. So RLHF, we'll bring Professor Andy on for a deeper dive for y'all who are interested. But it's crazy to see that technique is getting hype right now, but started back in 2022. Chinchilla proved smaller models trained on more data outperformed larger untrained ones. So this redefines scaling laws. You have smaller models require less compute and less, infra. And honestly, this is also SLM is a big topic of discussion today as well. So maybe we haven't come to like a final conclusion on it, but this started, years ago. Bloom, open source, first like open source model, pretty cool, and you can run it on your own infra. And then we had this amazing moment of ChatGPT with GPT 3.5 in a UI, and it reached 100 million users in 2 months, and now pretty much brought AI to people who are interested in it, but the masses weren't there yet. But people who are interested in it finally had like an application surface. We're going to talk about what Jensen was talking about at GTC, but he really believes that having ChatGPT in a UI was the instrumental moment for the whole industry, because now you can see things come to life. So, did you ever use ChatGPT in 2022?
Yeah, I think that's when I first started playing around with it, because 2023, 2023 is when I started building audio feed and other things.
Yeah.
Once it was available through the API, I think it's when they opened the API up. But yeah, I think I played around with it. In 2022, I think it was probably towards the end. Yeah, it was
Because it was
November.
like November 30th.
I think I did. I have an account, but I didn't really use it much yet. I didn't really know yet at that point how I could use it, other than, hey, this is pretty cool. It can kind of just answer questions for me.
Dude, I think I was a hater because I also signed up, and I just didn't know what I wanted to do with it, and I didn't really. It's not like you could wire up MCPs back then, and it's purely a chat, and there was no memory either.
Yeah.
But it did know, you could ask it my traditional question back then was like, who's the villain in Hamlet? But I could have found that on Wikipedia, so it doesn't even matter. So maybe I was using it wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that's a lot of what it was. I kind of thought this would be cool if I was in school at the time. I feel like I could have gotten a lot of information quickly, because you could have follow-up conversations, right? It wasn't just you Google something and you have to search for the answer. It could just give it to you. But I definitely was not a heavy user in 2022.
Yeah. Moving on to 2023. Now, people don't see Llama mentioned anywhere much, but back then in 2023, Llama 1 and just Llama models in general were the bee's knees, in the sense that Facebook was investing a lot into developing these models. They were open source, and showed that it's not just GPT-3 that exists in the market. And I think Llama 1 was very popular amongst open sourcers. GPT-4 came out. This was March 14th, 2023. This had text and vision. You could paste images in there. You passed the bar exam, which is pretty sick. And I believe that law firm we're talking about, they just had to undo their trained models because they could just use GPT-4. And the economics changed of their business, but it worked so much better than having to invest time in that. Then we have Llama 2. So like as I was saying, Llama was pretty popular. They pretty much made an open weight large model for commercial use. I think people started playing around with it. Our French friends in Mistral come on the scene here. With their 7B model. Also open source with Apache 2.0. Gemini gets in the game. But as everyone may not remember, Gemini and Google were not really in this conversation, though that they were investing a lot in research and stuff. None of the production models that they put out were favorable by many people. Also, Google used to give away this for free. You didn't have to have a API key at all. You could just use Gemini, and I guess they just wanted your training data, to be honest. Mistral, once again, they're in the mix. And then 2024, I feel this is where stuff really starts popping off. You got Gemini 1.5 Pro, which has a million token context window, and pretty much people were super stoked about that. This is the era of RAG, by the way, 2024, year of RAG, 100%. So but then, because Google was not very favorable, RAG still was king, let's just say. Claude 3 comes out. This is a big release. We have Haiku, Sonnet, Opus. This is where I started getting more into this stuff for coding. And I just noticed that it was really good at just coding problems and writing code. And I don't know if they back then had ever made that distinction that they were good for engineers, but you could just tell. Like at this moment, you could tell. And also, the OpenAI APIs existed, and people were trying it. And then people started flocking to Claude 3 just because it was better at coding. Llama 3, pretty cool. Unfortunately, there's only one more Llama release before everything goes to shit. This is the last good one, April 18th.
And it still was behind.
Yeah.
Even Llama 3 at this point was behind everything else. It was cool because it was open source. That's why people were like, this is cool. It's open source.
Yeah.
I can use it. I can deploy it on my own. But it definitely didn't. It was, at this point, had started to fall quite a bit behind the other flagship models.
Because at this point, people, structured output was not a solved problem yet. I would say it is very much a solved problem today. But you'd have to massage your responses for structured output. You'd have to coax the model into returning structured output. Llama 3, historically, I remember when we were using it, it just sucked at that, which is such a non-starter for application development, GPT 4.0, this was sick, and became many people's beloved model. GPT 4.0, people had girlfriends, boyfriends, people use it in ChatGPT a lot. It was like the powerhouse model, and yeah, I think people still miss it, of course, but yeah.
I think they thought it had its own personality.
Yeah.
Of sorts.
Yeah, I don't miss it at all personally.
No, it was slow and
It was slow.
it was so slow.
Yeah. Then 3.5 Sonnet. I think 3.5 Sonnet for me was, I became a believer in using AI to do coding tasks. At this point, I remember you have to be in the loop. There was no autonomous. There was no work trees and doing 10 things at once. You are doing one thing at once, and you're looking at everything it's doing because it's probably screwing up everything. But it would write so much code for you that you didn't have to write it yourself. Llama 3.1, we're getting...
I do really feel like Sonnet 3.5 in Cursor, I remember that being...
Epic.
Yeah, that was really...
And we were using Windsurf, too.
Yeah, Windsurf and Cursor around that time, which is just...
No Claude Code yet.
Yeah.
And people were building their own terminal agents, too. Can you believe that? So now, the world has changed, right? Llama 3.1, we're getting towards the end of Llama. This also, I wouldn't say it's a flop, but it didn't really move the needle. O1 came out, and O1 was a huge milestone for the whole industry because now we have this concept of reasoning models. And before we did not, right? They were just chat models. And now you have this concept of chain of thought at inference time. Previously, you'd have to chain a lot of these things together yourself. But now the model itself could do thinking and then give you a response. And O1 was really good at science and math. Then we have DeepSeek V3. This is the first kind of sense that the Chinese are coming. They were always developing stuff behind the scenes, but this was the milestone for them. This was day after Christmas, 2024, and I believe we had found out that we got into YC by this point. And then we started YC January 5th, 2025. And one of my very vivid memories in 2025 is the DeepSeek R1 launch.
Yeah, the DeepSeek moment.
The DeepSeek moment. Everyone in our batch was going wild about it. Andy loved it. He was trying to train models on top of it for his company. And so it was the talk of the town. It was cheaper than O1, but people just were scared of the privacy concerns. Where's your data going? Is China going to take all your data? But it really did cause market shockwaves. Perplexity at the time embraced DeepSeek R1 in their deep research, and that was like a big use case of using multiple models in your product. So that was cool. Also, 2025, March, now I remember this vividly, when 2.5 Pro came out, it had reasoning, it had a 1 million context window, and pretty much everyone said RAG was dead. I wouldn't say Gemini was the reason that people started saying that, but this is when all the people that we knew were saying that RAG is dead. Why do you need RAG?
Yeah, you can just put it all in context. And I think this is where Google finally made at least a little bit of a claim that they might be. They still weren't quite in it, but they were starting to feel like they were maybe in the game a little bit.
Yeah, they were, and like you had to pay. You had to start paying. Actually, no. 2.5 Pro was still free. You could still use it for free. I believe you didn't even need an API token still. And the reason why we know that is we wanted our users to get started with Masha very quickly. So we just said, hey, you should use Gemini because you don't need an API key. You can just get started. Then we have D-Day for Llama, April 5th. Llama 4 pretty much released, and it had a lot of backlash in the socials. People said it sucked. There was a bunch of regressions from Llama 3.1. And since then, I don't think there's been another Llama model after that flop.
Yeah, well, they're supposed to release a bunch of Llama 4 models, right? And I think their biggest one, I don't remember what it was called, but they never ended up releasing it, or they pulled it back.
And I wonder if that Llama team is still there. I don't really know.
Yeah.
But you'll see now that Llama will not exist on the timeline, maybe till later. Next, we have big moments. Claude 4 Opus, really powerful. No one used it because it was expensive as hell, but people who had money did, and they loved it, which is tight. We were still using Sonnet 3.7 or something at this time. Kimi K2, now the Chinese are here. Huge milestone. Open source model. Not as good as the American models, but you could see in the benchmarks, you could see that they were on their way. Much like the DeepSeek, too. They're on their way. In response to that, there was this big scare about, oh, China is doing better than America and everything's not open source and stuff. So OpenAI did respond by having GPT OSS. I don't know anyone who uses this model, but it does exist, and you can run it on your machine and stuff, so that's really cool. But it was just a response that maybe to shut up some haters at the time. And, you know, as we all know, the Chinese did catch up, so that's cool. GPT-5 was this next generation version, but for all things considered, it was a question of if it was better or not. I think now we know that it is better, but at the time, there was no like huge step change that people were accepting.
It didn't seem like as big of a deal as they were making it out to be.
Yeah.
But I think now if you look at the point releases, the 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, it's continuing to improve on the 5 models.
You know, they don't put 4.5 as a milestone because it was a huge flop. And I believe they removed 4.5 a little bit after release.
Yeah.
And then 5 had this big question in the market of is OpenAI actually the best or not? 5 did not land well with some people, landed well with others. So yeah, just interesting to see where we've come. Gemini 3 Pro, this is where Google is now in the market. People are starting to use Gemini 3. It's a little expensive compared to what they were using with like 2.5 Flash, but definitely a big moment. They also had the AI Studio that they did that time, and I believe, some other projects like the ones that we love, like Nano Banana and stuff started. So this whole thing started happening for them. They also made like A to A at this time, which is dumb. Just throwing that out there. But, they had Gemini 3, which is good. All right, so now let's talk about the big moment that we've had recently, which is now getting us into this year. But this was last year. Claude Opus 4.5. They launched this, and then a week later, they doubled your usage limits and your rate limits. So they wanted you to use this model as much as you can, and we did. All of
Yeah.
us did.
Well,
Right?
yeah, well, that I can see that moment because it's when I finally thought it was possible to run, multiple work trees.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. Like maybe you can run multiple work trees and let this thing cook for a while.
Yeah.
And it was definitely a time where you felt like you could ship a lot really quickly.
Yeah. I remember my holiday break. I heard some people saying that we need to rebuild GitHub, and I was like, this is the perfect time where the usage rates are doubled. I'm going to try to rebuild GitHub, and I technically did, and using Opus 4.5 and letting it cook. This is the first time, too, where you truly could let it cook, and you'd be very impressed with what it did.
Yeah,
It was dope.
where it wasn't just you get it to write a function for you or finish an idea. It was you could give it an idea and let it
Yeah.
start from the ground up.
Plus, with any harness you're using, like OpenCode or, like Claude Code or whatever, you felt very powerful with planning tools and asking questions, etc. So, like for me, I think this was the latest step change since, Sonnet 4, Opus 4, and especially,
It felt like a big step change in
huge
my
step
opinion.
change. Yeah.
And then GPT 5.2 was also it started to feel like maybe OpenAI was not quite as good for coding tasks, but it was starting to seem close.
Yeah. Yeah. So these are all the milestones, but there are some things that happened in 2026. Let me just go to all, and you can see there's just so many minor things that happened along the way. So I encourage all of y'all to check out LLM-timeline.com. But what's happening in 2026? We'll just go through some of them. Sarvam, the Indian model, came out. We have Quen 3, so Chinese are here. Opus 4.6 came out. Not much of a step change, I would say, in terms of dramatic step change, but you have a million context window, which is dope. 5.3 Codex came out, which is now, I think people love 5.4 Codex more, which is probably down here somewhere.
5.4.
Oh, it hasn't hit the timeline yet, but
Yeah, well, it's just 5.4, right? It's not even Codex.
oh yeah, it's 5.4.
It's just GPT 5.4.
Yeah. And then you have GLM5.
But you can use it for coding tasks, right?
Yeah.
You don't need a specific coding model.
GLM5, very popular. Minimax, super popular. Quen, super popular.
Yeah,
Grok got in the game.
this is where you can see the Chinese models starting to really just this year. They've definitely had a moment where they're not quite to the frontier model, but they're surprisingly close and much cheaper.
And then our latest thing is Gemini 3.1 Pro. So much history, and it's all in the last 2 years and then part of this year. So it's really wild, the progress that we've made. Yeah, so that's LLM Timeline.
And if you're just tuning in, this is Agents Hour. We do this usually every Monday, right around noon Pacific. Today we're doing it on Tuesday. Had a little live stream snafu yesterday, but we're back today. And we cover all the AI news going on. We bring on guests that are building agents and working with AI kind of across the industry. And we try to keep you updated on all the things that are going on at Mastra as well. So if you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe. Find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the places. But should we do it? Should we get
let's get into the news.
Let's get into the news. All right, so there's quite a bit going on in the last week. We have quite a bit of things we can cover. I mean, I would say there's not any major one big thing, but it was kind of nice that we got an extra day because there's a couple things that came out today that we were able to add to the news that I think are worth talking about. So here's a little preview around what we're going to be talking about today. but I thought this was very a good way to start. So I think this was on the All In podcast, and Jensen, CEO of NVIDIA, was on there and was talking about $500,000 engineers that are on his team, and he basically said if your $500,000 engineer isn't burning at least 250,000 in tokens, something is wrong.
Yeah.
And that got me to take a step back because I know I'm not building or burning 250,000 in tokens, and I had a goal this year to burn a lot of tokens. So I am not adequately. I did not set my goals adequately enough. What about you?
I don't think I've burned 250K in tokens yet, but I'm on my way, dude. I'm on my way.
But this just has incentivized me, and maybe maybe that's a quote because he wants people to burn a lot of tokens, right? If you're burning tokens, at the lowest level, NVIDIA is winning, right?
Oh, 100%. At GTC Conf, he talked about the AI factories and how with this new architecture that they have, which is heterogeneous, you will be able to burn more tokens. So, makes sense. Hopefully you burn it on something good, though.
Yeah, like rebuilding Git.
Yeah, like rebuilding Git.
All right, so yeah, once we get through the burning a lot of tokens, OpenAI made an acquisition. They acquired Astral, so they're bringing Astral on to join their Codex team. And I thought this was an interesting acquisition. Were you at all familiar with Astral?
Yeah, so if anyone uses Python, you know that there's certain libraries like UV, Rough, that are part of the Python toolkit. And so from that perspective, like, wow, it's a really big acquisition. But also, it's interesting. Does that mean that Claude has picked TypeScript, or Anthropic has picked TypeScript by acquiring Bun, and now OpenAI is being more bullish on Python? Something interesting to think about, because it's a very similar type of acquisition for both companies, and they're both acquired companies are joining their coding teams.
Yeah, it's almost like they want to own some of the underlying tools.
Yeah.
Which does make you think maybe OpenAI is wanting to own more of the Python ecosystem.
Yeah. Congrats to the Astral team.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about Cursor and Kimi. So Cursor announced on March 19th, Composer 2 is now available, and they show kind of where it sits as far as costs and performance. Looks pretty good. And then they have this new interface called Glass. But then something interesting happened. Someone came out and said they were messing around with the base URL in Cursor and caught this. And then they said, so Composer 2 is just Kimi K2.5 with RL. At least rename the model ID. And this got a ton of views. And so then everyone was speculating, wait, did Cursor just use Kimi K2 or Kimi K2.5 and not attribute? It is open source, but you have to attribute, I think, as part of the license. Yeah. And so they were wondering how, if they paid for that, if they were doing it like in a shady way. And then people speculated, are they trying to make a deal now behind the scenes because someone caught it? And then Kimi came out and said, congrats, we're proud to see Kimi K2.5 provide the foundation. And then it says, note, Cursor accesses Kimi K2.5 via Fireworks HQ hosted RL and inference platform as part of an authorized commercial partnership. So they wanted to clear the air.
Yeah.
That said, like, Cursor did it, above board.
Would they have said anything if they didn't get caught? I wonder.
Yeah, that's what I don't know.
Yeah.
Did they, so someone speculated, a complete speculation, that they just reached out after the fact and made this, the lawyers got involved and made it all happen. But that seems a little far-fetched. It probably was, above board, but we'll never know.
Yeah. Funny thing about that Cursor Glass thing is there's like a bunch of posts about like why it's like a good new UX, but it just took so long, and maybe it's not as relevant for users anymore since now we're in a terminal kind of world. So I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So this brings up a good question. You said now we're in a terminal world.
Yeah.
So we did have a note that says you need to make sure you're talking into the mic.
I will.
Thanks, Jonty, for the chat. Yeah, so I do think, we're living in a terminal world. That's an interesting quote because I was on a call with someone who basically is trying to get their entire team of non-technical people to use the terminal. And I'm just thinking to myself, it's not going to happen.
No.
It just isn't going to happen. You're not going to see, like, maybe for now, because that's the best way to use these tools. But if people are thinking that the terminal is the final interface of AI, I don't think you're thinking far enough ahead. I don't claim to know what the final interface is going to be, but I will guarantee, I'll put money on the line that says in 2 years from now, like, most people are not going to be interacting with AI through a terminal interface.
Yeah, maybe it's just your email. Who knows?
Maybe it's Slack. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just think it is not going to be through a CLI, through a terminal UI. Now that'll exist,
Yeah.
probably. I think there'll still be a subset of people who want to use it through that, but I don't think it's going to be the final iteration.
Also, one thing about Composer 2, Composer 2 is dope in a way. Composer 1 and 1.5 are also good in the way that it's really fast and it makes moves very quickly. But I just don't think it's smart compared to the models from like Opus or 5.4. So if you're looking to do less brainy tasks, I think it's super good for that. And Cursor also has Cursor CLI for you terminal world people. But if you're an IDE, like, give Composer 2 a try, see what you think. Yeah.
And then I saw this, which I thought was interesting. Kimi raised another 1 billion. So they've basically 4x their valuation in 3 months. And I don't remember where I saw, but they had raised 3 rounds in under 90 days.
That is wild.
So I don't know why they're having to raise so much money. Probably because they're burning so much tokens on inference, which is a good problem for them to have.
Is it $1 billion USD or is it won?
That's a good. I imagine it's
I wonder.
USD, but
Yeah, it probably is. Because it's like I think one won is like 15 cents.
yeah.
So it's even more.
Okay. Yeah, it's probably
Probably $1 billion then.
It has a dollar sign. Is that? I don't know. I would imagine it's USD, but
Probably.
Who knows? But either way, it is pretty wild that they've raised so much, and their valuation is skyrocketed. I mean, the models are pretty good, so I can see why. It seems like every week we have this slide that my model or my agent creates for me that says Anthropic ships, because no other way to categorize it. They just ship a lot of stuff all the
Shipping a
time.
lot.
So they have Claude Code channels, which allow you to control your Claude Code session through select MCPs, starting with Telegram and Discord. I think channels is, and this is why I know it's not going to be terminal UIs. Channels are picking up steam based on like OpenClaw making it a thing. We had, talk to your Master agent in Slack, early on. This is months ago.
Yeah.
And we had people that liked that. We talked to our Master agents through Slack quite a bit internally. And so I think this idea of channels, like bringing your agent to you where, on your device, wherever you're used to talking, whether it's Telegram, Discord, Slack, email, whatever.
Vercel has Chat SDK with adapters for channels. I don't think they call it channels, but maybe they do. And they're also hiring a full-time engineer to work on Chat SDK. So that is also some evidence.
Yeah.
Mosher will have channels in a week.
Soon.
So.
Very soon. So they shipped a new feature in Claude Cowork as a research preview, Dispatch. So one persistent conversation with Claude that runs on your computer, but you can message it from your phone, come back to finished work. It's kind of similar to channels in a way, but you can basically dispatch work on your computer, let it run, and then interact with it on the go. So it's available in the Claude desktop app. They did share, so Claude has kind of released this article, which got a ton of views around just how they're using skills internally. I would definitely check this out. So it's TRQ212, Tariq, from the Claude Code team, wrote this really long article. You're not gonna see it all here, but it goes into depth of just how they think about skills. So if you're a team that's looking to adopt skills or use skills, you can probably learn a lot by reading this article. Major takeaway is that, if you spend the time and you curate and craft the right skills, you can you can get a lot out of them.
And these are very detailed. Like, I think the skills that I've seen on skills.sh, some of them are very detailed and some of them are just like bullet point lists. Yeah, it'd be good for everybody to read this blog post. You also notice how most blog posts are on X now?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
X is maybe the new blog,
Yeah.
and
I
maybe
think so.
it's selection bias. I spend more time on X, so maybe that's why.
Yeah.
But you used to see like links to Medium articles and Substacks, and now it's just people just post it on X.
Yeah.
So this is just kind of validation. Like Opus has a 1 million context window, and it was trying to push, kind of realized what I think data would support is that the drop off in quality is still really noticeable. So you should really, I think there was a report that said like after 240K of context, it degrades extremely fast, but obviously less is even better. So
Yeah.
I think it's just if you are using Opus 4.6, maybe don't use the whole context window or don't expect to get as good of results if you're using the whole context window.
Yeah, like compact early, or I don't know. I can't recommend that, but
Yeah.
I don't have this problem anymore. I
No,
don't really feel this pain, so I do empathize with them, though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think I never hit over 70K of context.
Yeah. Also, Matt Pocock, shout out. He has a Claude course. So if anyone wants to get better with Claude Code and stuff, he's teaching that. He's a great teacher, so check it out.
I wasn't going to say it, but I'm glad. I don't know if it's Carl OS. Carlos. There you go. Yeah. Carlos. Yeah. Thanks for saying it.
Yeah. And Carlos is he's been to our workshops. He's watched the show. So thanks for being here with us.
Yeah. Thanks, Carlos. So you can enable Claude to use your computer. This was the thing that came out yesterday, and so it wouldn't have made it on the show if we did it yesterday. So this is kind of nice because this, I think, if you just look at it, 52 million views.
Amazing.
So this is, I would say, probably this might be the biggest launch or the biggest news item today. And we wouldn't have even talked about it if we did it yesterday. So I'm kind of glad that we were able to do the news today because this is a big deal.
What does this mean for like Perplexity Computer? Also, Hashim was like, "Hey, this is AGI."
Yeah. Someone on our team said like, "Hey, this is AGI now." Yeah. So I think the idea is you can just like let Claude cook on your computer. You can open up an app and navigate around and figure things out, figure out your browser, fill in spreadsheets. It's like I haven't tried this. It just came out yesterday, and I feel like I have to.
Yeah.
Oh.
Everyone buy a Mac Mini. Install Claude on it.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be the new. It's not just OpenClaw. It's like buy a Mac Mini. I have an older Mac. I just want to try this on and just let it do its thing. I want to give it some like complicated app, like a audio editing app or something, and just see how bad it is because I feel like it's going to be bad, but I don't know. And so I want to test it. I want to test it with some kind of app that, like, you think about like using Photoshop back in the day. It just sucked, right? If you didn't know Photoshop,
it's not going to be good.
Yeah, and so I want to test it with something like that, just like an application that I would expect that it maybe you can do Figma for me. I'm not good at Figma.
I'm just curious how we have to play with it because I have Fruity Loops on. I like making beats. I have Fruity Loops on my the actual app. It would be cool to make beats with Claude through Fruity Loops on the app, but I just don't know if it'll do a good job.
Yeah,
I don't think it has the context of the application.
So that's the homework. We're gonna come back next week and we're gonna try it and just see how bad it is. My prediction is it's gonna be bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it'll do good with like spreadsheets. That's an interface that has been, how that interface works.
Yeah.
I do.
The vision of the model knows.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just curious on how well it'll work on applications that are less common and maybe more complicated. Not that a spreadsheet isn't complicated, but it's also, there are many people who spend their jobs working on spreadsheets all day. So I think they'd probably want to make sure it really works well with spreadsheet apps.
Does it know TurboTax Enterprise Edition that exists on my Microsoft computer? Windows 96?
Well, no, because this is Mac OS only.
Oh, really?
That's what it says.
Oh, no wonder. That's a cheat, dude. Okay, sorry. Then I take it back. That's a whack, okay? Yeah. All the Windows automation that could happen needs to happen.
They got to start somewhere,
That's true.
I do feel bad for Windows users. It feels like they're with all these AI tools, they're getting the shaft.
They are, dude. No one cares about them.
Like Conductor, Superset, you know, like Claude Desktop releasing features only for Mac OS. Yeah, I feel bad. If you're a Windows user, I sympathize, but you know,
Get a Mac.
yeah.
No, or use Linux. Oh, then it still doesn't.
It still doesn't
even
work.
matter. But at least you could use all the other products.
So Stripe released Machine Payments Protocol, and this was about a week ago. And it says, you know, AI is evolving from question and answer chatbots to autonomous agents that can make comprehensive plans, execute actions, and evaluate outcomes. We believe agents will become an integral part of the internet economy, and they need the ability to transact with businesses and one another. So didn't Stripe also release like ACP or something?
Yeah.
So my first thought was, this is confusing.
MPP.
Now they have ACP, which they partnered with. I don't remember who they partnered with for ACP, and then MPP.
OpenAI.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, ACP
Or was that Shopify? One of those guys
Yeah,
with the S. Let's look it up
yeah,
real quick.
let's look it up here. So they have So Stripe has ACP, and then Shopify also has. We're looking this up on the spot. UCP, Universal Commerce Protocol. So that was what
that's the difference.
Shopify had. So Shopify did UCP with Google, and Stripe did ACP with OpenAI, and then they did this MPP with Tempo, what's Tempo? Tempo is a blockchain startup. Okay.
Interesting.
So my question is, like, maybe it's more like is it more like supposed to be for like stable coins, blockchain type stuff? That's how there is that the differentiator? It's just, you know, if you're Stripe and now you have two, you know, agentic payment protocols, and you're trying to maintain both, that seems like it's hard for me to even, you know, grok what the difference is here. And so I feel like that's going to be confusing to people. Maybe it'll become more clear. Maybe if I, you know, did more research, I would understand the intricacies of the difference. But I think on the outside looking in, if you're just trying to keep up with this stuff, it seems confusing that you'd have ACP and MPP.
Yeah, and Stripe's making a big play in stablecoins, and I think these are all payment intents, which is like a Stripe API to start a payment, you know. Also, I think it's interesting if you use this MPP, ACP, but you first use your agent to go get yourself a ramp card, and then it can go spend it through these other protocols. That's also really interesting.
So here's the difference between ACP and MPP, according to, you know, thanks Gemini for giving me this overview. ACP is for AI-driven shopping, so buying goods.
Mm-hmm.
So think of, this is why it's probably interesting for OpenAI, because you may want to buy a good right from ChatGPT or something. So it's actually like purchasing real products, while MPP is for AI-driven payments, like paying for API services.
Interesting.
All right.
So one's like physical goods-ish?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think so. And yeah, Canal says there's also
X402,
402.
HTTP native.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, I'm always on board with HTTP native things.
All right. So Better Auth
Yay.
announced, today we're announcing Agent Auth Protocol, an open standard for agent authentication, capability-based authorization, and service discovery. So it's essentially there's always been a lot of talk of like, how do you solve agent auth? Because on the one hand, it's you should auth similar to a human, but then on the other hand, you should probably treat agents differently.
Yeah.
So I think that's what a lot of people have struggled with is, should an agent just be authed to a specific human? You know, like this agent is authing as me, or does an agent, now, and maybe we're finally getting to the point where the agent is autonomous enough that it needs its own mechanism for auth, and it shouldn't be the same as like a human auth.
I'm sure WorkOS will also be in this, but very proud of Better Auth, the homie.
Yeah, for sure. So another thing that came out this morning, Cloudflare announced dynamic workers, which allow you to execute AI-generated code in secure, lightweight isolates. So the approach is 100 times faster than traditional containers. So sandboxes are, all you need. Sandboxes are all you need, or whatever. That's what a lot of people are saying. I think sandboxes are obviously a huge thing this year. Tons of sandbox providers are popping up. Cloudflare wants to, stake their claim that they're the fastest, or they're fast at least.
Yeah. I saw this joke online that it's this dynamic worker is just bash with a with a worker, which kind of makes sense if Sunil was working on this and got a bunch of slack from Vercel. But this is really cool. It's something we're going to be adding, not the dynamic worker part, but using Cloudflare sandboxes and this type of sandboxing, which we're going to be trying to add to Mastra.
And Carlos asks, what do you think about BetterAuth versus WorkOS? Both of them now have this.
BetterAuth, we're friends with both companies, so my opinion is you should pick whatever floats your boat. BetterAuth is open source. You can control all of the metal yourself. WorkOS has a similar product called AuthKit, but that is a hosted solution. They both solve enterprise auth solutions as well, and they're both trying to solve the agent auth problem as well, just from two different approaches. One is a seed company, BetterAuth, and the other is a Series C company. So David and Goliath maybe at the current moment, but both very popular, so you can't go wrong. Just debate, whatever floats your boat.
Yeah, I think both. I've seen people use both.
Yeah, we use both, but I would be honest, like when we're doing stuff for production use cases, we use WorkOS.
All right, cloud coding agents everywhere. So LangChain released OpenSWE, so it's an open source framework for internal coding agents. Yeah, cool. Congrats to them.
Yeah, I saw this announcement at GTC, and to Harrison's credit, he's a very good speaker, and it was a really good presentation, and it's pretty cool. That's the last time I'll say something nice, but I have to give credit where credit is due.
Give credit where credit is due. It's cool. All right, so Ramp, this got some, it got a little publicity because Ramp Sheets is self-maintaining. Now, I don't fully buy it, but they basically said they built an agentic system to maintain Ramp Sheets. It continuously monitors production, triages alerts, and proposes fixes without human intervention, although no code is merged without engineer review. And actually, okay, I guess I do buy that part, because I have seen many teams build similar types of triage systems honestly with Mastra. It's really popular around like SRE teams. Basically, like, think of like your initial triage, and oftentimes you can pick out patterns, right? If you've ever been on call, which I have, it sucks, right? If you've been there, then as you get an alert, you're going to go look for a run book. If the run book exists, you're going to follow the steps, you're going to debug, and if it's a common problem, you're going to hopefully have a solution and be able to get something and track down what the issue is. So a lot of the time, that could probably be done with an agent if it has all the information that you would have had. So I could see how this could work. I was talking to one company that basically said in the next 3 months they want 80% of all issues, like all production issues, to be solved within 30 minutes. And agents are going to be their way to do that.
Yeah.
So they right now it's able to solve some of the issues without any human intervention, but they're still trying to make that better. So maybe Ramp has done this, and like, yes, you still need human review, and I bet it doesn't work perfectly every time, but I could see a system where it's monitoring, it gets an alert, it does all the research, deep research agent on your, all your company information, all your code base, runs a coding agent, puts up a PR, fixes it most of the time with some human review potentially in there.
One thing that's missing in this era, I feel, like back in the day when we were coming up as engineers, like big companies would be doing all the exciting stuff, and they would open source their solutions for us lowly people to use. But I think these days it's more of like, this is what we're doing, and the code is like private. Like this is what we're doing, and this is how you could do it, which is awesome and interesting. I believe Boris from Cloudflare is building something called nominal.dev, which is you could do this through his product. I'll post this in our chat here. Very similar concept of triaging and trying to fix production automatically and stuff. So if you want your own, you could check his product out, or you build one yourself.
Yeah.
Do you notice that too? Like no one's like, oh, we do this internally. It solved our problem. Here you go, community.
Yeah, well, no one wants to open source anything anymore because you'll just fork it and have your coding agent rip it off. You don't want to be part of the training data.
Yeah, you don't want to be part of the slop fork era.
The slop fork of all your open source. Yeah, I do feel like, there's not the patterns in the code. Like the code doesn't exist. Like the people talk about the patterns, but they're not willing to share the details.
Yeah, which is interesting.
So continuing on, a little bit of open code Claude drama. Why not? Open code 1.3 will no longer auto-load the Claude Max plugin. We did our best to convince Anthropic to support developer choice, but they sent lawyers. It's your right to access services however you wish, but it's also their right to block whoever they want. We can't make an official plugin, so it's been removed from GitHub and marked deprecated. Appreciate our partners at OpenAI, GitHub, and GitLab who are going the other direction and supporting developer freedom.
It feels like Anthropic only sent the lawyers to OpenCode, right?
And also, there was a lot of, in other news, there was people, complaining about potentially getting banned, right? If they use this or they use Master Code with Claude, logging in with your Claude Max plan. And then, what was it? Who was it from Claude Code?
Tariq.
Who was it?
Tariq.
Tariq said, we're not doing that. We're not banning. Have been some instances where people were, like, it looked like fraudulent access attempts, and so they were temporarily blocked. And we had one person on our team that was temporarily blocked.
Yeah.
But it was most like according to them, and maybe they're just covering their tracks, they're saying it's not because they're using their Max plan in other places. It was because they looked fraudulent. So they're kind of speaking out of both ends of their mouth here, because it's like they aren't going to let you do it in open code officially, but they're not going to block you for it, but they're not going to support it.
And the messaging changes every week, it seems, because last week they're like, oh, if you use it for production use cases, you should be using Agent SDK or whatever. But also, if OpenCode got lawyers, like Theo for T3 Chat does not care. He added Anthropic models to T3 Chat, and he quoted the same
through the Max plan.
Through the Max plan. I posted his Twitter post about him doing this in the chat, so you could take it out on your own time. So if you're worried about it, Theo's not worried, and neither are we for now, I guess.
Yeah.
But if the lawyers come, I guess we'll get worried. I don't know.
Yeah. So I mean, here's you're not gonna be able to see this, but there's the post. Go find it from Theo, and he has a video called "I'm Not Scared of Anthropic." So, yeah. Which kind of seems like you're poking the bear a bit.
What if they send the lawyers, dude?
Yeah. And I do imagine open code is pretty popular, right? And so they probably are going to go after the really popular ways to get around it. And it's, of course, within Anthropic's right to do whatever they want with their subscription plans. I do think if you look at Anthropic, they are, they're all about safety, and what they are not about is open source or like developer freedom or choice.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty clear. They've the only big model company to never release any open source model. I don't think they ever will. You have to kind of use their ecosystem of they want you to use everything. So as much as I love Opus, it's I am starting to use Codex a bit more, and now 5.4, just because I feel like they don't always have your best interest in mind. It feels like they have their best interest in mind. All right, so friends over at Netlify released netlify.new, so you can just spin up a Netlify project Vibe Code and Netlify project. Stitch came out. This was last week. I heard from a number of people that said they were shocked at how good it was. So essentially, it's Stitch by Google, Google's Vibe design platform that transforms natural language into high-fidelity designs in one seamless flow. So you can create with a smarter design agent, describe a new business concept or app vision, and see it take shape on an AI-native canvas. So you can iterate quickly, stitch screens together with interactive prototypes, and manage your brand with a portable design system.
What do you want to design? I'm going to design something in the background right now.
Well, if you're watching this, what should we design? Obviously going to kick off something, and we'll see how it turns out at the end of the show. We'll give everyone like 60 seconds. If you have an idea, now speak now, or we're going to come up with something.
We can keep going while we wait. Otherwise, I'll just pick something.
Yeah. All
Bomberman.
right. Yeah. Well, I feel like it's got to be something that you would use Figma for.
Yeah.
You know, because that's what I would love to not have to use Figma. For all you Figma lovers, I am not one of those people. So this was some research that came out. So frontier LLMs score 85 to 95% on standard coding benchmarks. So we gave them equivalent problems in languages they couldn't have memorized, and they collapsed to 0 to 11%. So presenting the ESO-Lang bench. So essentially they wanted to see, like, if you can't, you know, it's kind of arguing that a lot of these benchmarks have become saturated, and the coding agents are now basically have basically gamed the benchmarks, right? Because they've been trained on the benchmark data. And if you ask them in languages that, you know, they couldn't have memorized that specific benchmark in that language, obviously it really significantly decreased. So this is kind of a cool idea around benchmarks, which is, can you do some of the same tasks in different languages? Now, you could also make arguments of maybe the model isn't trained as well on those languages. So I think there's some potential flaws to this as well, but it is interesting, and I think it's a good use of time to think through, how do we make sure the model is actually is it just memorizing, or is it actually able to solve the problem and reason about the right solution?
Also, that like when it got the answer wrong, given the appropriate tool calls, it was able to get it right. So it's pretty cool.
All right, now we'll go into the quick hits. So OpenAI last week released GPT-5.4 Mini. It's available in ChatGPT, Codex, and the API. So it's optimized for coding, computer use, multimodal understanding, and sub-agents. And it's 2 times faster than GPT-5 Mini. So that's pretty cool. It still scores, you know, if you compare, you know, Mini to the GPT-5.4 to GPT-5.4 Mini, it of course doesn't score as well. But if you compare it comparatively, it's pretty good and obviously pretty fast. Minimax M2.7 was released last week. It's the first model which deeply participated in its own evolution, with an 88% win rate versus M2.5. So it's state-of-the-art performance in SWE-bench and Terminal Bench. So it's pretty good model. Minimax is in the game. Morph introduced Flash Compact, the first specialized model for context compaction, and it's incredibly fast. So 33,000 tokens a second is very fast. So you can take, you know, 200K tokens and convert it down to 50K in about 1.5 seconds. So
we should definitely try this for the observer. See if it can work and if it's cheap.
Yeah, I know we experimented with this a little bit to try to see if it could help with making our observer faster. So if you are familiar with Mastro's observational memory, we have this observer agent that makes observations. And so it's not exactly the same as compaction. It's more of like a guided, observations, but it is similar, right? It's all just different forms of compression. And so we have tested this out. There were some things that didn't work in our situation, but we'll spend more time experimenting with it and see if it's a good model for being one of our recommended observer models. This got an insane amount of views. Today, we're launching the world's first AI CMO into your website, and it deploys a team of agents to help you get traffic and users. Try it now at okara.ai/CMO. So the idea is you can basically automate a CMO task with agents, and you can figure out strategies and plans to get more traffic.
Yeah, they give you an SEO optimization agent, AI targeting agent, Hacker News agent, Reddit distribution agent, and a content writer agent. Pretty cool.
And you can just see a lot of people say that, like the big model companies are going to eat everything, but I still think there is room for these like specialized agents that do specialized tasks. Now, will it work long term? I don't know. I haven't tried it. But the challenge with these things is you're always like, maybe you're only a model iteration or two away from the big model labs just offering something similar. But I do think that there is still room for people to build verticalized agents that do very specific tasks, especially if you have use some kind of edge on like how you would train or what knowledge you would give that agent, what information, what skills. So Letta has basically I'll sum it up. They're basically going all in on their coding agent. So they've been, Letta was kind of like a memory provider, and then they've really been focusing on like a memory first coding agent. And so they have a post on kind of their next phase and kind of the direction that they're taking all around like computer use and coding agents and things like that. So yeah, congrats and good luck to them. GLM OCR is a 0.9 billion parameter vision model that supports 8K resolution, 8 languages, and has built-in text, latex, and table recognition modes. So OCR is, especially if you've dealt with OCR models, it's incredibly frustrating, especially when you have like PDFs with tables that span multiple pages, and in this case it's taking a picture of like a shipping container and able to like read the text from the shipping container. So I still think that OCR is not a solved problem. It's still a huge opportunity, and this is a pretty tiny model, so it's pretty cool. And that's it. That's it.
Want to see what this thing designed?
Yeah, so we're gonna see what we were able to design while
Pretty bad.
while this thing was cooking. All right, but before we look at Avi's design, give us a star on GitHub if you haven't already. Mastra-AI/Mastra. Follow the show and subscribe on YouTube, Mastra-AI. And if you want to see what we're saying on X, you can follow Mastra, you can follow me, or you can follow Avi. And yeah, let's take a look and see what we got.
So I did 2 different designs. One was hating on Figma, essentially. Let me see. Is it this first one? Yeah. And it's really weird, yo. So I said landing page for Bomberman explicitly hating Figma. And the Bomberman thing is a throwback for our show because we used to make Minesweeper games whenever a new model comes out. Make it beautiful. I spelled beautiful wrong. But what's cool here is they did make me a design system and buttons and stuff, colors, and it picked copy. And Figma Buster is this design that it came. Figma is a time bomb. Diffuse it. Reclaim your creative freedom. Cool. Not very impressive to me. But I did do one based on the Mastra Code website, which is just a documentation page. So I'll share this tab. So it got our purple from that, which, we've actually changed our theme color now. But so same thing, design system. And I have no idea what this was trying to do. The kinetic engine for AI has nothing to do with anything. And none of this matters, but I didn't give enough context. All I did was make a dope landing page for code.mastra.ai. But I will say this looks pretty clean though.
Yeah, it is pretty clean. I mean, simple. It's simple.
And I could keep iterating on it, It should be about Mastra code. I don't know what kinetic engine is. And so this is kind of like, same old vibe, like vibe designing now. You can do this and export it. So we could export it to wherever. I don't know. So you can export it to Figma, Jules, some MCP. You can set up an MCP client. But this is cool. You can go to AI Studio and then actually build it with Gemini. Very, very cool.
I mean, I think that's the idea. Like, this is now like a vibe designer for like vibe coding apps to take.
Yeah.
Now you have a consistent design system, right? So I think when all these tools start to play together, you're going to be able to come up with a good design system that's consistent and then implement it. And now it has enough information for your code agents to make sure that it's implementing the designs in the right way.
Yeah. We have some questions in the chat here.
Yeah. So similarly related, Gold K3Y says Claude Code's front-end design skill is still the best agentic design tool I've seen. Yeah, I mean, I use it quite a bit, so I would agree that it's definitely useful. I haven't compared it to Stitch and seen how well it would do, but I use the front-end design skill. And then this from Ian Jones HD. We didn't go over this, but it did come up. We just didn't get it into the news. Maybe we can talk about it. Did you all go over the light LLM supply chain attack? So you saw that, right?
Yep.
So essentially that there was a supply chain attack on light LLM, and if you were to download a certain version from PyPy, it was potentially compromised, and I think it would try to send in information?
It's a supply chain attack.
Yeah.
I'm going to pull up the tweet for y'all.
Yeah, let's pull
pretty
that up
interesting.
and share it. But I did see that it was blocked. That version did get blocked on PyPy, so you can't download it anymore. So you should be all in the clear where you can't actually download that version if you hadn't already. So hopefully, it's been mitigated a bit.
They pretty much got hacked. But yeah, what it does is it'll, like, if you use that version, it'll collect all your credentials and then send it to a remote server, and then there you go.
Yeah.
But
So all
yeah.
your environment variables, which is obviously all your keys, typically. Yeah. So how did it get in? Was someone opened a PR and it got?
Somehow it got in. There was like another package that had this malicious.pth path, and it can just extract it. But I'm curious, like, there's no postmortem yet, which is interesting. This dude got pwned by it. He used the word pwned, so he must be hurting. And you can just see a bunch of people. There was a lot of drama around this too, because somehow, like, the issue got closed with a won't fix when it should be fixed, and the fact that it's still open right now, it's just very odd. I don't necessarily know the details from the founder and CEO, but these are all user reports right now, and I can share this. Daniel is a user who is impacted, so he reported it, and there's some jokes about who they're socked to, and everyone's hating. So I don't want to speculate until we know for sure what happened.
Yeah, but beware. Definitely beware. All right, that's the show. Thanks for tuning in to Agents Hour.
Yeah.
We do this every week. We talk about the news. We bring on guests. You can see we're in the same room, which is not normal. Normally, we're in different places, but we're together today. So hopefully you all enjoyed it. Go like, subscribe, do all the things. We'll see you next time. See ya.
Yo, that show's a wrap. We were live in the zone. AI Agents Hour, Shane and Abby on the throne. Did you give us that review? Only if it's a 5. Jump on the tube, make sure to like and subscribe. Yeah, news so fresh, yeah, we keep you in the loop. Guests so fly, they bring the whole troop. AI on the rise, don't miss this power. Welcome to the show, it's AI Agents Hour. Did you just drop in? Is this your first time? Make sure to follow us on X and go like and subscribe. Yeah, learn the principles and patterns in our books. The master.ai site, give it a look. Yeah, news so fresh, yeah, we keep you in the loop. Yeah. yeah, so fly. They bring the whole troop. AI on the rise, don't miss this power. Welcome to the show, it's AI Agents Hour. This is the end, we all wrapped up. Another showdown, another one coming up. AI Agents Hour's done, but the news doesn't cease. Shane and Abby, we out of here. Peace.